Up next, Authentically Detroit welcomes Professor Bernadette Atuahene to discuss the Coalition for Property Tax Justice's recent win, getting homes worth less than $40,000 off the foreclosure list. But first, this week's hot takes from the Metro Times and Outlier Media. Fact check. Tlaib did not say Nessel charged pro-Palestinian protesters because she's Jewish. And Detroiter may lose her home over a succession dispute. She's not alone. Keep it locked. Authentically Detroit starts after these messages.
Founded in 2021, the Stoudemire is a membership-based community recreation and wellness center centrally located on the east side of Detroit. Membership in the Stoudemire is available on a sliding scale for up to $20 per year or 20 hours of volunteer time. The Stoudemire offers art, dance, and fitness classes, community meetings and events, resource fairs, pop-up events, the neighborhood tech hub, and more. Members who are residents of the east side have access to exclusive services in the wellness network. Join today and live well, play well, be well. Visit ecndetroit.org.
Hey, y'all, it's Orlando. We just want to let you know that the views and opinions expressed during this podcast episode are those of the co-hosts and guests and not their sponsoring institutions. Now, let's start the show. Hello, Detroit and the world. Welcome to another episode of Authentically Detroit, broadcasting live from Detroit's East Side at the Stoudemire, inside of the East Side Community Network headquarters. I'm Orlando Bailey.
And I'm Donna Givens-Davidson.
Thank you for listening in and supporting our efforts to build a platform of authentic voices for real people in the city of Detroit. We want you to like, rate, and subscribe to our podcast on all platforms. We are finally back to recording after a long hiatus as we transition from WDET to our studio here inside of the Stoudemire. Donna Givens-Davidson, it's good to see you with these headphones and in front of a microphone.
It is really good to see you too. I feel like it's been a month of Sundays. We've been so busy, both of us. September,
yeah, in and out of town.
Oh my goodness, in and out of town. I tried to get a vacation in there and really had to struggle to keep it a vacation.
It didn't work. I don't think it's a vacation when you say, "Okay, I'll just come in one day that week," and that day is a board meeting. So I need to do it again.
We went to D.C. But it actually was during the Congressional Black Caucus
CBZ. Mm-hmm. That's fun.
It was kind of fun, but I didn't want to do it.
You're right.
I was just tired and irritable, and I was like, I need to take a break.
DC is work.
It was. I just decided, you know what? I'm going to take time off and just relax. I can't do work anymore because I'm tired.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, I'm glad you have rested up. Today, Donna and I are joined by the esteemed Professor Bernadette Atuahene of the Coalition for Property Tax Justice to discuss their recent win, getting homes worth less than $40,000 removed from the foreclosure list. She needs no introduction because she is a habitual guest. Bernadette, welcome back to Authentically Detroit.
Thank you for having me back.
You would think she needs no introduction, period, because of all she's done in this city. And I told her, and I'll always tell her, it is my responsibility to make sure everybody who knows me knows her name. You know, when they say her name, we're not just talking about victims. We're also talking about victories, and we're talking about leaders like Dr. Bernadette Atuahene. I'm so excited to see you. You know, you're one of my favorite people. And you just came back from a major victory in Los Angeles.
Yes.
Can you tell us about it?
I'll tell you about it. Before I tell you about it, I got to tell you that Donna is my number one hype woman. Okay, I feel like everybody in this world, you need your hype woman, and Donna is mine. Okay?
Yeah, I love it.
Proud to be. I tell you.
So Monday, what Donna's talking about is I was installed in my chair. So
come closer to the mic so we can hear you real good. There we go.
So yes, I received a chair. So I'm now at the University of Southern California Gould School of Law, and there was an installation ceremony for me and 3 of my colleagues who got chairs, and so that happened Monday night, and so it was really exciting.
Oh, you fresh off a major one! Congratulations to you, Doc. I love that.
And it's so major to have a chair inside of a law school like Gould. I mean, you know, that's like the best of the best of the best, and you're getting that recognition. But I always knew you were the best, so congratulations. congratulations. We're so proud of you. And
that's right. My community here in Detroit gave me a chair a long time ago.
That's right.
That's right. So we're going to have to celebrate all of that. I'm really looking to some kind of mixed celebration next year, sometime around March. Stay tuned, because we're really going to elevate this conversation about the work that's been done. So many times people suffer in silence. Mm-hmm. And so,
and what you've been able to do with your work is give that voice and surface some of these stories that so many Detroiters had shame about, right? That was living in silence and in shame. And you gave that population a huge microphone and platform. Doc. So we gotta.
And that's actually one of my biggest findings of my work is, when I started doing this work, I had started with interviews of all of the kind of politicians and kind of high-level people, and I asked them, because it's no secret. Since 2009, 1 in 3 properties has been taken through the property tax foreclosure process. So I asked them, they all had the same explanation, different words. One of them said it's because people bought houses they couldn't afford. Another one said, Detroiters just don't want to pay their property taxes. Another one said instead of paying their property taxes, they were buying purses. These are all what I call narratives of personal irresponsibility. You lost your house because you did something wrong. And that's where the shame that you're talking about comes from. Yeah. But what we were able to do through the empirical work is to show, no, this is not about personal irresponsibility. It's about structural injustice. Between 2009 and 2015, in each of those 7 years, anywhere between 55 and 85% of properties were being assessed in violation of the Michigan State Constitution. And when we broke that data up into 5 quintiles, quintile 1 being the lowest valued homes, quintile 5 being the highest valued homes, we found that in quintile 1 and 2, 95% or more of the homes were being assessed in violation of the Michigan State Constitution. And when we got to quintile 5, it was less than 20%, which means that this burden of illegally inflated property taxes were being borne by the most vulnerable homeowners. Yeah. And at the end of the day, the work that we do with the Coalition for Property Tax Justice is narrative shifting from this narrative. And this is not just a narrative that's prevalent in the property tax space. This is when you deal with vulnerable populations. Yeah. Shifting from the narrative of personal irresponsibility to one of structural injustice, right? Yeah. Because guess what you can't do when you're mired in shame? When you're under a cloak of shame, there's no righteous fight back. Yeah. And so first you've got to do the work about lifting that shame through those and removing the narrative of personal irresponsibility so that we can get to the point of righteous indignation and fight back.
It reminds me of any narrative where you have an abused person in an abusive relationship, and the person who's being abused is made to carry the shame of the abuser, as opposed to the person who's being abused really understanding you are the person who's being harmed. They internalize that guilt. They internalize all of the behavior. And when people begin to understand it's not me, it's you, they leave. And I know that because I did. But I do want to say real quickly that also one of the challenges is beyond I read in the paper not too long ago that the Wayne County has balanced its budget for something like the 11th time in a row. And that's not unrelated to the foreclosure crisis, right? Because to a certain extent, our treasurer, our Wayne County government, I don't want to talk about the treasurer, our Wayne County government, the structure, has balanced its budget on the backs of poor Black people. Am I right?
Absolutely. So I have a book coming out on January 28th.
You better plug this book.
Yes. It's called Plundered: How Racist Policies Undermine Black Home Ownership in America.
Say it one more time for the people in the back. Yes.
Plundered: How Racist Policies Undermine Black Home Ownership in America. And part of the story is it uses the story of Detroit to tell a national story about how Black people have been robbed and plundered, starting with slavery, but racially restrictive covenants, urban renewal, blockbusting, redlining, predatory mortgages. And so these illegally inflated property taxes need to be understood as just the latest chapter in a long history of dispossession of Black people, of our land and our homes. And so one of as I use the Detroit case study, one of the kind of pinnacle of the book shows, it asks the question, well, who's making money? And so the book tells a narrative of all the people making money, people who are buying from the auction. But the big the book reveals, and maybe I shouldn't be telling you the goods of the book so that y'all could buy the book and not just...
you can't stop me from buying it.
What a big reveal is that it was Wayne County who was making the majority of the money from property tax delinquency and foreclosure in Detroit, right? Everybody knew that Detroit is in the largest...
A lot of us know that already.
That's it.
But
everybody knew Detroit was in the largest municipal bankruptcy in U.S. history. But what people don't know is that Wayne County was also at the brink of bankruptcy.
Yeah.
And they saved themselves from bankruptcy using something called the Delinquent Tax Revolving Fund, which is full of money mostly from Detroiters for them delinquent taxes from foreclosure, the 18% interest, et cetera. That's the money that they use to save themselves from bankruptcy and emergency management. So,
and another part of this, and I know we are going to move on to some other things before we really get into your work, right? But another part of this I just want to uplift is who is in Wayne County, just in case anybody's listening and does not understand what Wayne County is. Just to the east of us, we have 5 Grosse Pointe communities. West of us, we have Livonia, Northville, a portion of Northville, Dearborn. All of these communities, Dearborn Heights, all of these communities, when they talk about the Detroit, Livonia, Dearborn metropolitan statistical area, they're the ones who lift the wealth in this area, while Detroit is a weight on that wealth because we don't have as much wealth as other communities. So in this county that has these wealthy, majority white communities, they're balancing the budget through public policy on us. And we didn't even know it. And, at some point, we've got to say, your tax cuts came at our expense. All of these tax policies at the state of Michigan came at the expense of us. In fact, I'll even go as far to say that the Downtown Development Authority, the tax abatements, the TIF, that takes money out of the public purse and puts it in the hands of private developers, those dollars are also not going to the county. It's not just city dollars that get abated or get given away or what's the word? Not deferred. You know what I'm trying to think of the process by which a tax is captured and taken out of the general purse and put into this private usage. But I'm not doing a very good job of it right now.
You said it capture.
It's tax capture.
Yeah.
Right. But at any rate, my point is that this policy there's a direct linkage. And I think until I read your work, I didn't understand the direct linkage. And it just really blew my mind. And I think more people need to understand that so that we can fight for the policy change at the local level. But also, shouldn't this county with all of these wealthy communities be able to afford its own government and fund its own government?
I mean, we would think so. But let's circle back to this because we still have a lot to cover and we're going to get to your work, Bernadette, but we still have to do hot takes. Hopefully we have enough time to do it. Fact check. Tlaib did not say Nessel charged pro-Palestinian protesters because she's Jewish. Michigan Attorney General Dana Nessel, a Democratic state lawmaker, and some news agencies are falsely claiming that U.S. Rep. Rashida Tlaib said Nessel's office only filed charges against pro-Palestinian activists at the University of Michigan because she's Jewish. The spurious claims stem from an interview that Tlaib did with the Metro Times on September 13th. Tlaib, who was born in Detroit to Palestinian immigrants and is the only Palestinian-American member of Congress, argued the charges were an unjust and heavy-handed response to peaceful civil disobedience. Tlaib pointed out that Nessel, who has been in office since January 2019, has not filed charges against protesters opposed to racism, police brutality, water shutoffs, and environmental contamination. Tlaib never once mentioned Nessel's religion or Judaism, but Metro Times pointed out in the story that Nessel is Jewish, and that appears to be the spark that led to the false claims. It should also be noted that the ACLU of Michigan criticized Nessel for charging peaceful protesters at the University of Michigan. Shortly after the article was published, State Senator Jeremy Moss, a Democrat who is Jewish, posted a screenshot of the story on Twitter and claimed that Tlaib's response was an attempt to divide us into good Jews she accepts and bad Jews. What Tlaib actually said was, quote, "It seems that the Attorney General decided if the issue was Palestine, that if the issue was Palestine, she was going to treat it differently. And that alone speaks volumes about possible biases within the agency she runs, end quote. Tlaib was referring to anti-Palestinian attitudes. Institutions throughout the U.S. have disproportionately sided with Israel, and many of them are not run by Jewish people. On Friday, after a Detroit News reporter drew up a political cartoon that appeared to depict Tlaib as a member of Hezbollah, Nessel repeated the false narrative. Rashida's religion should not be used in a cartoon to imply that she's a terrorist. It's Islamophobic and wrong, Nessel wrote on X, just as Rashida should not use my religion to imply I cannot perform my job fairly as Attorney General is anti-Semitic and wrong. Okay. On Saturday, CNN host Jake Tapper followed up with a segment in which he falsely claimed that Tlaib said Nessel only filed charges because she's Jewish and that the protesters are not. Tapper made the statement while interviewing Michigan Governor Gretchen Whitmer and tried to get her to weigh in on the false claim. Whitmer, because she is astutely trained, did not take the bait. Donna, what say you?
You know, it's like one of those things where people who pretend to be colorblind accuse me of being racist when I make a statement and I never mention being black. It's like, that's because that's how you see me, and you can never see me outside of this identity. People can't see that Rashida Tlaib is concerned about Palestinian people, and they believe it's only because she's Palestinian, as though there are other people of faith and goodwill who are also concerned about what's happening to the people of Palestine. There are people who protested who were not Jewish and who were not Palestinian, who were not Muslim. In fact, there were Jewish people who protested and got arrested. The issue was the cause.
And black folks.
And black folks, thank you. The issue was the cause, not the ethnic identity of the people who are protesting or the religion. Well, I look at that as connected because people can be Jewish and not share But at any rate, it's one of those things where I believe Dana Nessel was telling on herself because she could not see anything that Rashida said outside the lens of her Palestinian identity. And so I think actually she in some ways was reinforcing the narratives of the cartoon as opposed to in any way defending her. I was very disappointed by that.
I was very disappointed in that this was a staffer of the Detroit News, and apparently, to my knowledge, is still a staffer or a contractor. I don't know what the relationship is, but this person has a Detroit News email address. And I've not heard any kind of repercussions on this cartoon, being published in a national syndicate that was also picked up by the Detroit News. That is disappointing. The other thing too that I have to call out is the lack of media literacy on part of everybody, including especially these politicians. All it takes is for you to read, bro, sis, non-binary person. All it takes for you to do is if you go back and you read the Metro Times article, it's very clear what Rashida said and what she did not say.
But people cannot hear her words outside of the filter of Islamophobia. And because Islamophobia is still allowed in our community, therefore people feel free to engage in it. People can't hear what I say outside of the context of me being a black person because racism is still there. And people can't hear what you say outside the context of being a black man because racism is still there. And so I think it's important for us to understand the source of the problem is not that people can't hear, it is that people interpret anything said by a person like Rashida. And it's been going on for so long. When she says anything, she gets treated to such a strong double standard. It's really unfortunate. So I stand with her as I always have. She has always stood with our community in the city of Detroit, always stood with ECN. And it's not fair when this woman has actually been imagine her grandmother's there. And she is being called Hezbollah because she's concerned about her own people. It's unconscionable to me. And the fact that people minimize it and actually weaponize that concern and weaponize her advocacy against her and call her anti-Semitic for caring about her own people is really...
It's really ridiculous. And what's funny is that, she's an enemy of the Democratic national establishment. But what's also funny is that they don't know what to do with her because they can't get rid of her. Because her home here in the city of Detroit, in her district, she is well beloved. She is well liked. She is, and she's going to continue to get elected, I think, as long as she continues to run. And so they're going to have to figure out how to coexist with a member of Congress that looks like Rashida Tlaib, that talks like Rashida Tlaib, and that represents the constituency that Rashida Tlaib represents.
People love a fighter in Detroit.
Yeah.
And she will not stop fighting. She will fight until the fight is over. She's not compromised. There are very few people in Congress that are that true to their own people, who don't get to, D.C. and start changing a little bit and moderating their views. This woman is staying true to who she is.
And she flies right back home.
She flies right back home. I admire the mess out of her, and so I will always be on her side. She is, again, I remember when she came to our annual meeting. Do you remember that, Orlando?
I do.
A few years ago? And
I put it together.
You put it together, but do you remember what she said?
Tell me.
She'd just come back from Lansing. This is when the community benefits agreement was being negotiated with, or, forced on us by the city. And she had just come back from Lansing to talk about environmental justice issues. She was in Lansing fighting for environmental rights we didn't even know were being violated at the time.
Yeah.
That's who she is. And she said, what good is a job if you're not alive to work that job?
Yeah.
She talked about the impact of health and and then afterwards, she helped us file petitions. She sent letters to
opened an office at ECN.
Said she did. She had an office open at ECN, and she paid us rent. It was like $150 a month, but that's good. Her constituent services were outstanding, and but yeah, she fought for us when we didn't ask her to. We had just asked her to come speak, and she was already fighting.
She was already fighting. And hello, Detroit News, Kevin, everybody over there. Rashida Tlaib did not deserve this. She did not deserve that. And something should be done. That should not be able to fly under the radar. And so.
No, what does Nolan Finley say? Well, it wasn't us. It was published in the National Review, which is a completely separate paper. We had nothing to do with that. And their email address is right there.
Let's move on. Detroiter may lose her home over succession dispute, and she's not alone. This is by Erin Mondry at Outlier Media. The final avenue for Yolanda Chambers to save her home may have just closed. The 66-year-old Detroiter has been trying to hold on to her residence on Rutland Street in the Grantmont neighborhood since her husband, Robert Chambers, died in 2018. He was the only person on the deed and mortgage, and he made his only will prior to marrying her in 2005. Yolanda Chambers' home may be lost in part because she didn't go to probate court to settle the property's ownership status until it was too late. That tiny seed of doubt about who owned the home gave the lender, Michigan First Credit Union, enough justification to deny her any forbearance on a mortgage Chambers couldn't keep up on. Just 2 months after she got behind on payments, the credit union started foreclosure proceedings, saying it couldn't help her because she wasn't the legal owner of the home. Michigan First got possession of the house in August 2022. Chambers has been fighting with the creditor in court ever since. She believes the credit union acted with unnecessary aggression and speed to seize her home. Michigan First should have been required by law to contact me and decide if I'm the rightful heir to the home, Chambers said. They never did that. Michigan First declined to comment on the specifics of the case. Donna?
I'm going to defer to our professor in the room.
Reporting.
It is a heartbreaking report, but I don't believe I have as much expertise to even comment as Bernadette.
Yeah, I think this is a big issue in the city, heirship. So the
Tangled
good
titles.
the good news is that, what's this, the legal nonprofit, they just got a lawyer who's doing this work full time.
Detroit Justice Center?
No, the eviction.
Lakeshore.
Lakeshore Legal Aid.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Lakeshore Legal Aid just got a lawyer who's working full time. Her whole docket is helping low-income Detroiters deal with problems like this, getting their the right name on the deed, et cetera, doing probate, taking them through probate. And as far as I know, that is the only place that Detroiters can go to get this kind of free legal help. So it's so important and so necessary.
Yeah, it is. I think, part of the problem is people don't know what they don't know because, most people don't know property law, right? So you're living in a home, it's your husband's home, and people assume that the marital assets are shared assets in the state of Michigan. Why would you know that you had to go through this process to get your name on the deed? There's
it also
people
feels like 2 months of non-payment is really preemptive in terms of starting dispossession a dispossession case. 2 months.
Agreed.
You only have 2 months to be behind on your mortgage,
that sounds
and they
like a
come and
land
take your house.
contract.
Yeah, 60 days, yeah.
I think that it does, but I think that you're right. I think the issue is also, why is a credit union doing this? You expect this to come out of a bank, but where are the policies that are governing credit unions? I thought they were supposed to be community-oriented lenders, and Orlando's looking at me like, okay, that's you thought. All right.
I mean, credit unions are federally regulated. I am intimately and somewhat sorrowfully familiar with this process as I chaired one Detroit credit union for about 7 years. But they're federally regulated and regionally regulated. The DIFS department at the state of Michigan is a regulator, and the NCUA is a national regulator. A lot of this also depends on the internal processes and procedures at a credit union. When One Detroit was experiencing, let's say, auto delinquency, our members had more than 2 months to pay before we started trying to take the car back.
That's what I'm trying to say.
Right? Michigan First has the power within itself to establish, a process flow whereby they can say, okay, not 2 months, but I don't know, 3, 4, 5, 6.
And that has actually historically been one of the upsides of a credit union. They're supposed to be closer to the people, more in touch. And so I'm very surprised that they didn't have a conversation and use that to start to open a dialogue with the owner. Instead of just after 60 days filing the
I also don't think that we can
papers.
divorce this kind of behavior, not just from the reins of capitalism, but from place. Ms. Chambers lives in a desirable neighborhood. She has a beautiful, beautiful home that is worth a whole lot of money. More than she has, and probably a windfall that the credit union maybe would want in being able to mortgage and sell that home. And so
I always say when you want to get to the bottom of any problem, you got to follow the money. And when you follow the money, it was in their complete financial interest to begin this as soon as possible. And we have to be honest about that.
That's a very good point. I think we also need to hold credit unions and other entities that were formed for the purposes of trying to facilitate economic justice accountable for just that. And I think that it also goes back to narrative. And that's that narrative you were just talking about, Bernadette, this idea that people are losing their homes because they're lazy, they're irresponsible, they can't afford it. And so it makes it so much easier to dispossess people of something when you think of them as less than people, or at least as people who are less than you, right? If you really looked at them as being your equal, if you really had compassion and you could see yourself in them, you would not do these things. That's why we have to also raise consciousness and the significance of your work and others to really build this vision and build this understanding is super important. This ran in
Outlier.
And so Outlier has that purpose, right?
Yes.
Of trying to help reshape narratives.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So shameless plug, outliermedia.org. Go on, check out our stories, check out our investigations. You won't be disappointed. Listen, we're going to take a quick break, and we'll be right back with Professor Bernadette to talk a little bit more about her work. Keep it locked.
Have you always dreamed of being on the airwaves? Well, the Detroit Eastside Engaged Podcast Network, or DEEP for short, is here to make that dream a reality. Located inside the Stoudemire, the DEEP Network offers studio space and production staff to help get your podcast idea off the ground. Doesn't take a whole lot of work to get started. Just visit the Authentically Detroit page at ecn-detroit.org or call Sarah at 313-948-0344.
Welcome back to Authentically Detroit, everybody. We have Professor Bernadette here. Founded in 2017, the Coalition for Property Tax Justice is a collective of several longstanding Detroit grassroots organizations formed to accomplish 3 goals. Number 1, stop unconstitutional property tax assessments. Number 2, compensate Detroit residents who overpaid or have already lost their homes because of illegally inflated property taxes. Number 3, suspend pending property tax foreclosures until it is confirmed that the delinquent taxpayers were not unconstitutionally assessed. Bernadette Atuahene is a property law scholar focusing on land stolen from people in the African diaspora. She is the daughter of Ghanaian immigrants who grew up in Los Angeles and attended UCLA for college. Then she earned her JD from Yale and her MPA from Harvard. Professor Bernadette won a National Science Foundation Award for her current project about racialized property tax administration in Detroit, which has received several accolades, including the Law and Society Association's John Hope Franklin Award for Best Article on Race in 2020, and the prize for the Best Overall Article in 2024.
I'm so proud to know you and be
I
your
am
friend.
so happy. It's fun seeing Bernadette in this light again because, when we've been seeing her lately, she's been coming to parties. She's been coming to get her groove on with us.
Listen.
She came to my birthday party. She came to the DJ set. She comes to Playlist Live.
Let me tell you this.
Happy belated birthday, Donna Givens Davidson.
Thank you. Oh, happy belated birthday, Orlando.
it's been that long?
Yes,
Yes.
it has.
Yes.
Yes, it's Virgo's in the house. But no, we're past Virgo month. It's a very sad time. But no, I saw her at the Secret Society of Twisted Storytellers.
That part.
Oh my goodness! If y'all just
Check it out on YouTube.
It was great. It was
it out
the
on
greatest
YouTube.
story because, listen, when I first heard about it used to be the Coalition for Unconstitutional Tax Foreclosures, and I was so new to this job. 2017, I've been here for 1 year, and I was like, unconstitutional? They're tripping, okay? I had no idea what was happening in our midst. None. I knew people were losing their homes, but I didn't understand all of the brokenness that went along with it. And you came to Detroit and changed the game. And so I really want to honor you always for that, because if not for the work that you did, so many other things probably would not have happened as they did, right? We've gotten things happening at the state level and at the local level that we have to give you a lot of credit for. And probably the most impactful part, one of the most impactful parts, is the Coffee and Stories.
Yes.
And I'm proud to say they're held here.
Yes.
It's standing room only. She fills up the atrium.
Because
at
people do what
ECM.
like me, because I always say to her, I do whatever you tell me to do. Mm-hmm. People do what she tells them to do, and showing up is one of them. I mean, having the superpower of being a convener, Bernadette, is a divine superpower, but it also speaks to the impact, right?
Right.
Yeah.
So I was so surprised by this impact. I was like, how does she know how to organize so well?
Yeah.
Then you
And
found
then
out in
I
the
found
story
out in the
that I was
story.
actually a community organizer in
Yes.
South Central LA before I went to law school.
Training under who?
Karen Bass.
The mayor of
Karen
LA,
Bass.
Karen Bass, who's one of my sheroes.
Yeah.
I love Karen Bass.
Did we get to interview her?
No.
Okay.
No.
I thought we got to interview her.
I
Okay.
wish we did. I remember that one.
She's amazing.
But no, she's amazing. And so, tell us something about your background in organizing and working
Tell
with
us
Karen
about
Bass
you.
and
Yeah.
you. Yeah.
Yeah. So when I was at UCLA, I was on campus, just a little radical on campus, involved in all kind of community work, and I was doing education and policy, and then I just discovered organizing. I was like, ooh, this is it right here. And there was a job opening at what used to be called the Community Coalition for Substance Abuse Prevention and Treatment. Now they just call it Community Coalition, or COCO. And I got a job, and I was the lead organizer for a campaign called Neighborhoods Fighting Back. And what was happening is in South Central LA, we had more liquor stores in this very small part of LA than they did in the whole state of Rhode Island. And not only did we have an abundance of liquor stores, but the liquor store owners were engaged in irresponsible business practices. Like they used to sell beer out of the cup, before it was illegal. And they used to also
cigarettes.
Yeah, you got Lucy cigarettes. And they didn't sell crack, but they sold the paraphernalia you needed to smoke crack. Mm-hmm. And so the campaign was about making sure that these stores in the community were accountable to community. And so that's how I kind of cut my teeth.
And that's hard line organizing. I mean, that was, you were organizing around like some hard, tough issues in South Central LA.
In South Central,
Is that why
yeah.
you so fearless?
Yeah.
back then, South Central was South Central.
And absolutely. But it was, so that's how I started. And then when I came to Detroit,
can you go back though? You told a story in your storytelling about meeting with Karen Bass and how she inspired you and how she sort of changed your outlook. Can you talk about that just a little bit?
Yeah. Well, Karen, in the story I talked about my interview when I was coming to Community Coalition, and they were all lined up and we were doing the interview, and then Karen just prances in and plops her little self down. I was like, oh, okay. The executive director just came into my interview, and then she just asked me, she said, so I just have one question and one question only. Is it okay if I ask the question? Everyone was like, of course, this is your shop. And she was like, what are your politics? I was like, I'm a Democrat. She was like, no. I'm asking you, what are your politics? I had no idea what this woman was talking about. So I just started rambling, and it just happened that at school I was preparing for a debate about the criminal injustice complex, right? Criminal justice. And so I was telling her I just started talking, basically, nonsense. And then in the middle, she said, okay, that's it, gets up and just walks away. And so I was for sure I didn't get the job because I was just talking crazy. Anytime I start talking crazy, I'm talking crazy. I start saying, and what not. So it was a lot of that happening. It was just, I was just drowning. And so I thought I didn't get the job, but sure enough, they called me and they said, Bernadette, you got the job. And so when she was asking me, what are your politics? She was like, what are you about, girl? You know what I mean? Like, what are you about? And I was able somehow through my rambling to communicate to her, like, I'm about social justice. I'm about defending marginalized people. I'm about standing shoulder to shoulder with marginalized people. And that got through, and I got the job. And it was a transformative job.
So you're on
moment.
the first name basis with Mayor,
Well, I knew her before she was the mayor.
Yeah. She
was my executive director.
I love that. So you were getting ready to talk about your coming to Detroit. Yeah.
Yeah, so, that's the key part. So once, usually as a professor, when you find these things, you write an article, maybe even an op-ed. That's the farthest most professors go. But this was just too much. I said, my God, up to 85% of properties being illegally assessed. And it was just, I'm telling you, something overtook me. Like, it was so clear for me. I'm a spiritual woman. And when I had those findings, it was so, God was like, this is where I need you to be.
I need you to be planted.
God called me to Detroit. And and one thing I can say about myself, I could say lots of different, but one thing is I'm obedient.
Yeah.
And I don't hear lots of different. I'm not one of these, Lord spoke to me. No. Yeah. I don't hear lots of things. I heard this thing. God said, called me, you need to plant yourself here and handle this. Mm-hmm. And so that's when the organizer in me really kind of connected with the academic in me. And then we created the Coalition for Property Tax Justice. And we've been working, again, like you said, since 2017 to really slay this dragon. Mm-hmm. And it's so beautiful because the space that Donna was talking about, that ECN so beautifully hosts every month, it's our organizing space called Coffee and Stories. And what's so beautiful is we have usually we have a guest speaker. And then the kind of central part of the event is we literally go around and everyone gets to speak. And some people just say their name. Some people tell their whole story. They could say that, but the space is for them. And that's the space that's so powerful because people are like, oh, my God, that happened to you? I'm not alone. And that's when people start realizing, oh, my God, this is systemic. It wasn't just me. Because when people lose these homes, like you just said in the hot takes, if the bank owns it, then the bank is going to take it. When the government takes it for property taxes, those are usually legacy homes. So people are just kicking themselves in the head. I lost granddaddy's home. I lost mama's home, right? And they're just so filled with shame. And so that space where they hear other people in the same situation and then they get to hear the data around the systemic injustice, it frees people, again, for that fight back. And so that's what's so beautiful about Coffee and Stories. And at the end of every Coffee and Stories, we have a tradition. We go around, everybody does a speed round, says one word about how they feel, and then we all together yell Umoja, which means unity in Swahili. And that's how we always end every Coffee and Stories.
Can I just say this? there's all of these people in the room, and everybody has to talk. And you would think, okay, this thing has to end at noon. It's not going to end at noon. One thing you must have learned in California is how to keep time, because when I tell you 12:59, she's like, okay, we're done.
11:59.
11:59. 11:59, you are done.
I respect people's time. We end at 12, so even if we got to speed up at certain points, but we end at 12 o'clock.
Incredibly structured, but also very inclusive kind of conversation. And holding space for both structure and inclusion is something that is the sign of great organizing. Orlando used to do that. Orlando would be like, and he would try to keep me under wraps. That was always his biggest challenge. He's laughing, but he wasn't always laughing. Sometimes I would be like the problem child, but Bernadette will have none of that, okay?
Oh man, it's really remarkable to witness. I've witnessed a few of these, and I love that you talk about narrative, but also the organizing work of the coalition is resounding. If you pay attention to any city council committee, if you pay attention to general session and other entities that make decisions that has to do with people in the city of Detroit in their homes, there's always a representative from the coalition there speaking in public comment. And so the organizing strategy is bar none, is one of the best I've seen in the city. But you talk about and you capture narrative and you capture story, but I also take stock in other narratives that are trying to counter the research that you have done, that are trying to delegitimize the research that you've done and call you guys crazy, call you guys purveyors of misinformation. And I'm talking about people within the power structure in the city of Detroit who have their hands on the levers that you are trying to move. How do you process that, and how do you combat that?
Yeah, this is a really big issue. So, so we did our study, I told you, between 2009 and 2015. And then what lots of people don't know, everyone knows that Detroit got taken over through emergency management. But what people don't know is that because of all of this illegality I described to you, the city's assessment division also got taken over by the state. And they only got back control in 2017 after they finished a parcel by parcel reassessment of every property in the city. So after they did that, the University of Chicago Center for Municipal Finance did what's called an assessment ratio study to see how things were. And they found that through the middle, things got better, but for the lowest valued homes, things were still not fixed. And so we presented this data to the city, to the state tax commission. And basically what we were told by the state tax commission is, well, as long as the city was following our internal rules, there's nothing we can do if they're substantively violating the Constitution, right? And then the mayor then began to say that the data was wrong. And then the Duggan administration started to do personal attacks against Chris Berry, who's the professor who led the study. So then we said, all right, if you think it's wrong, show us your study. He refused to produce a study. And so then we got various academics from different universities to do a peer review of the University of Chicago study. And they were like, there's no doubt this study is correct. And then we put it back to Mayor Duggan, the Duggan administration. All right, our study, we have all the peer review, these other professors, university, UVA, right, Duke, all saying the study's legit. Where's your study? Never produced a study, just kept saying their study is wrong. And so what we did is after 3 years of organizing, we passed something called the Property Tax Reform Ordinance. And that does lots of things, like makes the property tax bill legible and lots of wonderful things, but one of the main things it does is it forces the city to produce its own property tax assessment, property ratio study, right? So that, produce your study. If you think that the lowest valued homes are still not being assessed, produce your study. And so we forced them, we passed it, it was tumultuous, it passed in November, came into effect in January. They were supposed to produce the assessment ratio study in February. Do you think that study is produced even today? Mm-mm. Absolutely not. We're still fighting for them right now today. That study still has not been produced. The Duggan administration is dragging their feet in producing this study because anybody who knows anything about empirical work knows that the lowest valued homes in Detroit are still being overassessed. But the Duggan administration wants to claim that they fixed the problem when he came into office. But the point is, again, it's not fixed. But guess what? The first thing you need to do to fix a problem is acknowledge you have the problem. But we're sitting in a situation in Detroit where we still have the problem of the lower valued homes being overassessed, but the Duggan administration is in denial, so we literally can't have a conversation about solutions, et cetera, because there's just this denial happening.
Yeah. I was going to say that he's probably been trying to convince some researchers to produce a study and can't do it because there have been times where he has been leaned on various local universities to produce studies that are empirically inaccurate. But I think that your study is so good. The studies that you are referencing and the work that you've done is so solid that nobody's willing to take that on. Now, had you not produced a study, they would have somebody produce a study to try to justify what they're doing because that's how the city operates in so many ways. We don't have time for that. But I want to talk about in November when it passed city council because that was a really dramatic day. I was on line watching it online all day.
We all were.
And it was just amazing.
I
think my favorite part was when you educated our corporate council on the city of Detroit, what was allowable as an ordinance in the city of Detroit. It was just beautiful. But can you talk about that day and how that ordinance passed?
It was so much drama. So before the final vote, we had a vote because what we ended up having to do is we couldn't get, Corporation Council was just obstructing the whole process. And what Corporation Council is supposed to do is something called the approval as to form. And that is that it's just supposed to be saying that, this is legal. Okay. But what the approval as to form process has become in the Duggan administration is a way for the administration to put in policy items versus thinking about legality. And so they kept trying to do that. We literally were trying to pass it that prior November. We couldn't because they kept. And then we just finally said to our political allies, look, they're not coming on board. They're going to continue to put these policy issues that kind of backdoor these policy issues through the approval as to form process, when in fact these policy issues should be debated at the dais, at the table publicly. And so we said we're going to need to move forward without the approval as to form, and we needed a majority vote to do that. And that's when we produced our church fans, and it was all the women in city council who voted with us to move forward from approval as to form, and none of the men. And so all the women came with us. And so then we were ready for our final vote before the full city council, because that vote was just asked to move forward without approval as to form. So when we got to the big vote, we had our church fans. On one side of the church fan were the pictures of all of our women, our sheroes who voted with us the last time, and the other was all the men who didn't vote with us. And so you can't bring signs into city council, but we sure as heck can bring church fans in there. And so we was fanning ourselves and letting everybody know. And so it was just, and so we were able to, at that one, we were able to pass it. And then at the last minute, Coleman Young came along. So it was the women in Coleman Young at that final vote.
Can you talk a little bit about this latest win, right? The achieving of getting homes worth under $40,000 off the foreclosure list, and how that's going to impact Detroiters and home ownership in the city. Yeah,
absolutely. So I told you that the city, as a result of our property tax reform ordinance, they were supposed to produce that study in February. They failed to do it. So the University of Chicago, again, we're doing all this work for free. It should be charged, but for free. They produced a study, and it showed that homes worth $40,000 and under, the vast majority, over 65%, were being assessed in violation of the Michigan State Constitution, which says no property can be assessed over 50% of its market value. And so based on that study, because that's the only study we had, because the city hadn't produced the study it was supposed to produce, we went to city council, our allies on city council, and we said, we'd like you to pass a resolution encouraging Eric Sabri not to foreclose on homes 40,000 and under because we have evidence that they're being overassessed. And that vote was unanimous. And that vote was only unanimous because we had already dealt with them with this property tax reform ordinance, and we had been building power. And so that vote was unanimous. And so Eric Sabri was resistant at first, but then at the 11th hour, he agreed, and he pulled all of the owner-occupied homes worth 40,000 and under out of the property tax foreclosure auction. So this past Coffee and Stories, he came and we celebrated him because we had been at odds for many years. Since the beginning. Let me just tell it straight. We've been at odds since the beginning. So he came and we celebrated him and we were working together. But we have 4 homes that we had identified that he had not pulled out. And so we were still working with him to pull those 4 homes out. One of them he pulled out, but he didn't pull the 3 out. And the auction actually just closed this Thursday.
Were they sold? Were they?
And we said, we emailed Treasurer Sabri, these homes have bids on them. Please pull these 3 out. We can confirm that they qualify for the poverty tax exemption. We will personally sign them up. Please pull these 3 homes out. It was 4 of them. He pulled 1 of them and not the other 3. So those 3 homes have been sold. So it's this situation where he did pull the majority of the homes, 40,000 and under out, but when it came to these last 4 homes, he still let the 3 go to foreclosure, although, so it's always a mixed bag with Treasurer Sabri.
Can I ask a question? Where were those 3 homes that were not pulled located?
I couldn't tell you that.
I think that would be an interesting follow-up. I know that we talked about the one home in the Grandmont Rosedale community, and I think in certain communities there's more of a demand.
I'm going to have my team look into that. It's a great question.
Sometimes there are development plans underway that the city is pushing for. I've seen that happen. So can we talk about scale, though? 3 homes didn't get pulled. How many homes did get pulled?
I can't. I wish I had the exact number, but it was. I wish I just don't have the. I don't want to tell you the wrong number.
Well, is it more than 10?
Yes, it was over 50.
Over 50.
Yes.
So I do want to say that over 50 homes were saved.
Yes.
Because
That's what I
of the work that the coalition has done. If not for the coalition, all of those homes would have gone to somebody else. That's tremendous. And if you do the math, that's still, I think, an A. So, and I'm giving you the A, right? Because you made it happen, and in so many ways, I'm excited about, that work. But I do also want to talk about your book a little bit.
Let's talk about the book, Plundered: How Racist Policies Undermine Black Homeownership in America. Can I read the back?
Yes.
All right. Just as Evicted uses Milwaukee to discuss America's eviction crisis, Professor Bernadette Atuahene uses Detroit to reveal another underreported national phenomenon, predatory governance, where public officials raise public dollars through racist policies. When Professor Bernadette moved to Detroit, she planned to study the city's squatting phenomenon. What she accidentally found was too urgent to ignore. Her neighbors, many of whom had owned their homes for decades, were losing them to property tax foreclosure, leaving once bustling Black neighborhoods blighted with vacant homes. Through years of dogged investigation and research, Bernadette uncovered a system of predatory governance where public officials raise public dollars through laws and processes that produce or sustain racial inequity, a nationwide practice in no way limited to Detroit. In this powerful work of scholarship and storytelling, Bernadette shows how predatory governance invites complicity from well-meaning people, eviscerates communities, and widens the racial wealth gap. By following the lives of 2 Detroit grandfathers, one Black and the other white, and their grandchildren, Atuahene tells a riveting tale about racist policies, how they take root, why they flourish, and who profits. I mean, goodness.
I can't wait to read that. When Evicted came out, and Matthew Desmond did a great job, and he really focused on the city of Milwaukee, and it really did open my eyes to a crisis. It did have a little bit, but it was really focused on Milwaukee, right? That's where the ethnographic stories were really rooted. And in this instance, it's Detroit.
Yes.
And it's, so weird to have a Detroiter tell Detroit stories through the lens of Black people living in the community and not people who are coming in and observing us. And I don't mean to criticize those people who've done it, but you actually have centered this among people who live in the community, and you're telling stories not just of Black people, but other people. But I have a sense that the story that you're telling is really telling it through the eyes of the people who come to your coffee and stories events. Is that true?
Yeah, so one of the so as I was doing my work, so, again, I do ethnography, which means I live in the place I study. So my prior project was in South Africa. All my work deals with land stolen from Black people. So last project, I was living in South Africa for over a decade to work on that project. And so I've been living in Detroit for now 7 years working on this project. And I did over 100 interviews of people whose homes were stolen, they lost their homes or homes were taken through, they didn't lose them, that suggests, right? Their homes were taken through property tax foreclosure. And how I picked the main character, the character's name is Myrisha. I have to use a pseudonym to protect her identity. Her name is Myrisha. And how I picked her is because when I did an interview of her, I interviewed her at UCHC, and we were talking, and I'm telling you, that interview, I was with her for first for an hour and a half, and honey, we was crying together and laughing together. And when we ended the interview, she was nowhere near done. And so I was like, no, this is a story that needs to be told.
I mean, you got hundreds of hours of tapes.
Yes, and so that's how I found her. And so then I started interviewing others. And so what I found is my one main character, one of them is white, right, of Italian ancestry, and Myrisha is Black, and her from North Carolina. And what I found is that both of the grandfathers were sharecroppers. One was a sharecropper in Italy. It's called mezzadria, that system, and a sharecropper. And they both came to Detroit at the same time and got jobs at the Ford Motor Company. One in 1903, one in 1905. So they arrived at the Ford Motor Company, two sharecroppers. And so the book follows the lives of these grandfathers and their grandchildren to show America. These are two people who came around the same time from impoverished circumstances, but just because of the color of one of their skins, their fate and their family's fate is drastically different, right? Because of the color of their skin, Grandpa Brown, Myrisha Brown's grandfather, right, was not allowed to go to the suburbs, to live in the suburbs, where the houses were cheaper and bigger with better amenities and better schools, right? Because of racially restrictive covenants, they were locked out of those homes. Because of blockbusting, the homes that they were relegated to in the city reduced in value. Because of redlining, the homes that they were relegated to in the city were reduced in value, right? And it just shows you, because of these layers of what I call racist policies, right? Any policy practice that leads to racial inequality, and that's exactly what redlining was, blockbusting, racially restrictive covenants, all of that. They're all racist policies. Because of these racist policies, you have a situation, again, where you can see through these narratives, one family ends up in a very different place than the other. And the last thing I'll say is, what we as Americans love to say is, I have what I have because I worked hard. And what the book shows is Grandpa Brown worked hard too. Myrisha worked hard too. But their endpoints are dramatically different.
You know what the trend that I'm seeing and that I'm loving is that, researchers, writers, journalists will, have a thesis. And what I've been seeing lately in the books that I've been reading is that this sort of affinity for a case study where you follow people and you really do original reporting in the book. It really is a form of journalism. I let Professor Bernadette come over to the journalism side to report on and surface these stories that are not common, right? I mean, that are common but aren't commonly told, which I cannot wait to read. And, even just by surfacing these racist policies, everybody was in on it. The FHA was in on it. The insurance companies were in on it. National realtor boards were in on it. City governments were in on it. When we really do the work to uncover just how sophisticated and how this system is/was, and how it continues to permeate, we really begin to understand that personal responsibility, trying to assign personal responsibility after somebody has gone through this is insulting.
Yes.
It is racist, and it needs to stop.
I was in Atlanta a few years ago. And we were there to see the Beltline, which is sort of like the DeQuinder Cut.
Child, I was just there.
It's
last week.
An area where they have taken a former train station. They've created this walking pathway, this beautiful park.
Throughout the city.
Absolutely gorgeous, right? It's the most beautiful outdoor space I've ever seen. I was like, wow, stunned. And around it, you had these $1 million apartment buildings sprung up, and all of the real estate had just appreciated in value. So they took us there. And then we got on the bus and we drove about 5 miles away, and they took us to visit this community, which was a Black community. They parked the bus and we got off the bus, and here's a lady sitting there in a wheelchair. She has helped facilitate the creation of a park next to her house, taking public lands and turning it into a park. And so the challenge she is facing was getting people to maintain this. And so here she is in a wheelchair trying to maintain it, trying to convince people to maintain it. And the question is, why aren't these people doing that? Why aren't the people willing to help out? And I said, we just came from the Beltline, and I wonder how many people living in those $1 million apartments come down and mow the damn lawn. How many of them come down and pick weeds? The expectation is you live here and somebody's going to do this for you. And the expectation in Black communities is if you live here, you ought to be grateful to have this, and therefore you have to do extra work. In the city of Detroit, Black folks aren't just doing as much work. You have to do extra work to live here. You've got to watch other people's kids. You got to watch the house across the street to make sure nobody's broken in. And during the time when Detroit was going through bankruptcy, you didn't have bulk trash pickup. You didn't have anybody controlling. Nobody was maintaining the lots. When you look at what Detroiters do with themselves, when you look at a Willie Mae Gaskins who's 90 years old and still out there fighting for the community, this is who we have to be in order to survive. And I think it's important that our children and their children, everybody understand that we are not failures, that this city and the representation of poverty is not a reflection of failure of Black leadership. It's not a reflection of the failure of Black people to take care of our homes. It is a failure of a system to deliver justice to the people who have always been treated in an unjust manner. And your book makes that case beautifully. I haven't read it yet, but I know you, and I can't wait to read it. So we're going to have you back on in our book club.
Our book club. Yeah.
I love it.
The Authentically Detroit Book Club.
And I really don't want that to be like just us. I think it needs to be a community event.
Yeah.
Because
so we're gonna pull on you to tell people to come so they'll come.
It.
All right.
We can do it at Coffee and Stories.
Let's do it. Oh, that would be great.
Yeah.
We'll have to figure that out.
Yeah.
Professor, thank you for joining us on Authentically
Thank you
Detroit.
guys for having me.
Always a pleasure. Listen, if you have topics that you want to discuss on Authentically Detroit, you can hit us up on our socials at Authentically Detroit on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, or you can email us at authenticallydetroit@gmail.com. All right, it is time for shout outs. I'll go first. Happy birthday to Donna Givens Davidson.
Ooh, happy birthday.
She celebrated her birthday last week, and I hope you had a great time. I was screaming all the way from Atlanta, happy birthday. I love her. She's just an amazing. I call her my friend, my colleague, and digital bodyguard. Because if anybody don't act right online, Mama Donna coming.
She's coming for him.
Because she got time. She I got time today.
Like I told Bernadette, I can't be fake.
She gonna make time.
I'm not blessed with I'm not best with the gift of fakeness. But when I love you, I love you. And, and I just want to, actually, my shout out is for you, Bernadette. You inspire me.
We love
make
you.
Me so excited because you are emblematic of the change that can happen. Mm-hmm. And so I really want to celebrate you. I also want to celebrate Ebony Taylor, who is now the Vice President of Higher Heights. And which
board
is
member of ECN.
Board member of ECN.
Chandler Park native.
Yes. Amazing woman who is actually working to elevate the voices of Black women nationwide. And she invited me to be on a panel on Friday where I got to tell Bernadette's story there. But it was really amazing. She asked me, and I was like, I wonder if anybody's going to come. And they had a room full of people. I was like, wow, this is really awesome. So shout out to you, Ebony, for the leadership and the growth I've seen in you since you started there.
Yeah. Bernadette, you have any shout outs?
Just a quick shout out for Miss Anderson. She's one of our leaders. She just had her 73rd birthday party Saturday night, and we was grooving, and she had a live DJ,
That's
the best
right.
food, and
Now, Bernadette love a party.
I love a party. We just not trying to be out here organizing. We
Come
trying
on,
to
let's
shake
party.
some booty as well.
Okay, but Bernadette, what did you want to be when you were young?
At first, I wanted to be a doctor, but then
When you were
I
young,
switched it up.
When you were a child, you wanted to be a
A
doctor?
pediatrician.
Okay.
And then I switched it up. I wanted to be, but I'm my parents are from Ghana, so I had 3 options.
You're a doctor.
Doctor, lawyer, engineer. Those are my only 3 options in life. So I decided to be a lawyer.
I love it. All right. We thank you all so much for listening to Authentically Detroit. It's good to be back. Donna, I'm happy to be back.
I'm happy to be back, and I'm happy to be here at ECN in the Stoudemire, connecting the people who come here to our work. So we were blessed to be at WDET when we were, but we don't have to go to that parking garage, no more stamp tickets. We can just come in and have a good time. So anyway, thank you for coming. And I do want to celebrate the fact that we have 3 young people here who are part of our Vaulted Youth Voices. And so this is your first time really seeing the podcast at work. And the next time you come, you're going to have your own microphone and you're going to be asking some of these questions. So thank you for joining us. I'm looking forward to passing on some of this leadership to a young generation of leaders.
And I mean that. All right, y'all. Thank y'all so much for listening. Take some time to love on somebody and allow yourself to be loved on. We'll see you next time.